Welcome to SmithWeekly Discussions, an occasional program for our readers and listeners of SmithWeekly Research. Please note this program is a private discussion and everything contained herein is for entertainment and educational purposes only. With that, we hope you're in a comfortable position, along with your favorite beverage, to enjoy the discussion. We are joined today with Heye Daun, CEO, co-founder, and director of Osino Resources, a Canadian-listed gold explorer focused in Namibia, West Africa. Osino is listed on the Toronto Venture Exchange under the symbol OSI and on the U.S. OTC markets under the symbol OSIIF. Heye, thank you for coming on.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Pleasure to be here.
So Heye, most of our listeners probably haven't heard of you before. Tell us your background and then give us a bit about your past failures and successes in the business.
Great. Thanks, Andrew. And let me say thank you very much for the opportunity to be here and to talk to your listeners. So you might hear in my accent that I'm a bit of a blend. So I'm of German descent. My parents immigrated to Namibia in the early 1960s. And they are cattle ranchers. I was born on a ranch in Namibia and I grew up here. And I became a mining engineer and a mining entrepreneur in this country. So I've lived here all my life. I've spent about 20 years in the mining industry, 10 of that in operations and technical, and the other 10 more on the financial side. And my first success as an entrepreneur really happened in Namibia also. It was a deal where we bought an exploration project called Otjikoto, which was very unknown at the time in 2010. It's about 8 years ago. And we raised money on the TSX. We listed a company called Auryx Gold, and we advanced that project until we ultimately sold it to B2Gold in 2012, and they built a very successful gold mine. So this was great because it was in my home branch. I made some money, but more importantly, it gave me a bit of track record, and it enabled me to do other deals afterwards. So I've done a few in between, and another notable one, I guess, that also relates to Osino is a company now called Lumina Gold. It used to be called Ecuador Gold Copper, which was also a gold development asset in Ecuador, which I managed as a CEO. I wasn't the founder. I was brought in as a turnaround CEO, I guess. And so we breathed some fresh life into that company. We settled some debts and solved a lot of problems that they had, and ended up selling that company to one of Ross Beattie's companies. And that's really how Ross Beattie got to know me and became involved in Osino.
Well, no, I appreciate the information and the background. I want to talk a little bit about the other companies here in just a moment, but I want to just take a step back and look at kind of the broad natural resource market and also, on gold. So tell me your thoughts on what's going on with gold. And why do you continue to focus on gold? What do you like about it at this point? And where do you see gold going in, 2019, 2020?
Okay, well, at the outset, let me say I'm a mining engineer, not an economist. So, trying to forecast gold prices and talking about economic macro picture, etc., isn't really my specialty because, I've been in the business a long time and I have opinions and I'm happy to voice these. But I'm not an expert. So my approach tends to be that I focus on what my core competency is, which really is execution and getting things done. And the markets I have to accept. I do like gold because for a couple of reasons. Firstly, I have quite a lot of personal experience building and operating gold mines. So I have a strong familiarity with what can be successful in gold mining. I also like gold because it is a commodity or a metal, which is, probably one of the most amenable commodities to public market financing, because a large or a critical part of my business model is to use mostly North American capital, ultimately in public companies. So, and gold and copper is suitable for that. So that's why I like gold. In terms of my views on the macro picture, I'm bullish, very bullish lately, especially. I think the key metric to watch is the US dollar. As we know, gold has always been seen as a hedge to that. And I think, the last few years we've had a strong dollar. We've had a strong US economy, and it seems to me that's changing. So I think I'm not the only one that believes that the trend for 2019 and beyond is positive, and I think the risk in the gold market is very firmly to the upside. So I think we are well positioned for that. But I should also say that in exploration, we are not that dependent on the gold price per se, but we are very dependent on sentiment. And that sentiment in the gold market seems to be returning at the moment, which is obviously very positive for us.
Yes, I agree. I think that we're at more or less, compared to, maybe late 2015, early 2016, we're at a kind of a sentiment low. And we have, these new, events that are kind of taking place with, the Barrick Randgold getting together and now Newmont Gold Corp. And there's some rumors and whispers about other mid-tiers and majors possibly getting together. So it's an exciting time, and there are certainly some events that are starting to change the tune. Let's put it that way. So are there, besides gold and copper, are there any other metals that you like right now, Heye?
I tend to stick to my knitting, so I usually do only one deal at a time. So right now I'm heavily focused on gold. I am involved in coal. I have a coal project together with some partners in South Africa, and even though coal seems to be somewhat out of favor in terms of the whole green movement and so forth, it's still an essential commodity in the energy mix. So I think there's potential there. Namibia is a big host to lithium and battery metals, even though, again, I'm not an expert in that, but some of our licenses in Namibia, some of our gold licenses have some associated industrial minerals in the form of lithium on them. So I do like that, again, because it seems to be financeable and there's investor appetite for it. But other than that, I rely on my sort of technical expertise, 10 years in the gold market, or 10 years building and operating gold mines. So I tend to stick to gold, although, again, Namibian relevance is uranium. Namibia is a very large producer of uranium. It used to be about 10% of Western world production. And it seems to be that uranium is also back in an uptick. So that could be interesting. And some of my colleagues here in Namibia are quite active in trying to put some uranium opportunities together.
Right. Yeah. And as you might know, we've done a lot of work on uranium since mid to late 2016. So we are certainly out there a lot in the space with being known for uranium research and so forth. So it is an interesting point in time on that side. So I want to get to Auryx in a minute, and of course introduce Osino. But can you go back to Ecuador Gold and Copper for a moment? Tell us how it started and walk us through, if you can, give us kind of paint a picture for us of going through the deal with getting together Odin and Ecuador Gold and Copper to form Lumina.
Yeah, so what happened there is Ecuador Gold and Copper has a long history. It was started by, I believe it was started by Ike Batista. I don't know if that name still rings a bell. He had a company called TVX Metals way back. And they were one of the first explorers in Ecuador. I think, I may be wrong on the exact date now, but it was in the 80s or 90s. Could have been in the early 90s. When they first found gold in Ecuador, they spent a lot of money there, did a lot of drilling. But ultimately, in a prior gold downturn, they ran out of road, and the project changed hands a couple of times until eventually it ended up in a Canadian shell, which became public as Ecuador Gold and Copper. In these last two sentences, I've compressed about maybe 10 or 15 years of history. So Ecuador Gold and Copper, in about 2014, when it went public initially, didn't get its timing right very well. So they couldn't raise money. They had a lot of issues. There were some management issues, some shareholder issues, and basically, even though it had a great geological endowment and it had some very, very strong Ecuadorian shareholders, it nevertheless became a bit of a sort of beaten up shell. So some of these good Ecuadorian shareholders were also shareholders in my company, Auryx Gold. And so they contacted me at that time. This is now 2015. And they were looking for a solution. They were looking for somebody that could settle the legacy issues, breathe some fresh life back into this company. By that I mean some exploration, get a new plan going, and then try to find a buyer. So I agreed to this. It was a risky strategy because, of course, you don't want to be associated with a company that goes bust. So I agreed to join this company for the two reasons I mentioned. One was that the geological endowment was excellent. It had 8 million ounces in a large porphyry project called Santa Barbara. It was low grade, but nevertheless a lot of gold there in a very attractive area, geological area that is. And it had these Ecuadorian and Argentinian very wealthy and successful entrepreneurs who were shareholders in Ecuador Gold and Copper, and they assured me that they would not allow this company to hit the wall. So on that basis, I got involved, and my brief was very simple: settle the issues, settle the debt, get it going, and then try to find a buyer. So that's what I did. So I spent the first year and a half sorting out the issues, cleaning up the share structure. We did a rollback, we raised a bit of money, convertibles and so forth, and got some exploration going and got rid of some of the sort of dead weight of the past. And then at some point through introductions and so forth, I got exposed to the Ross Beatty group. And I met Ross himself personally and his guys. And it was quite an important moment for me because I was very lucky to get on well with Ross. I think Ross took a liking to me personally because he saw, I would like to think, I can't speak on behalf of him, but I would like to think what he saw in me was my sort of integrity, honesty, what you see is what you get, sort of reliability, and also my ability to get things done. So Ross took a liking to me, and I mean, there was another interesting little tidbit in that Ross actually did his very first vacation job as a geology student in the mid-70s. He did that in Namibia. So he has been partial to Namibia because he had some very good times in those days being here as a geology student or young geologist. And me being a Namibian citizen, I think that resonated with him. So that helped a lot. That chemistry helped tremendously because, I mean, Ross took comfort out of me and it made the due diligence and so forth for them easier because Ecuador Gold and Copper was a company that had a lot of issues. So that was good. I guess I just did my job, built trust, and ultimately we ended up doing the deal. It was a very complicated deal, but it got done, and it resulted in the formation of Lumina Gold. I mean, subsequent to that, they've spun off some of the assets. I'm still on the board of Lumina Gold, and the relationship with Ross has been critical to me because he is a very important part in the success of Osino. I can say without a doubt that Osino would not have happened without Ross's involvement.
Well, what a fascinating story, and just being able to hook up with Ross in that situation and go through and get really a premier company set up there with everything that happened. A great chain of events and a good situation, and the story there, of course, is continuing. So take us over to your new venture, Osino Resources. Give us just a brief overview about the company, and then I want to get into some details.
Okay, so Osino Resources is a gold exploration company in Namibia. We had success here, as I said, in the past, and with that success and the building of the Ecuador Gold mine, which became a cash cow for B2 Gold, it gave us a lot of conviction in Namibia as being able to host significant gold deposits, because Namibia is an emerging sort of gold district, I guess. And so Osino was created initially to consolidate ground, put a package with scale together, position the right shareholders like Ross and some others, because of course exploration costs money, and then to execute and do exploration and find another deposit. So that really is what Osino is all about.
So Namibia, you're an expert, being from the country and being a native of the country, being born there. So of all the jurisdictions, why did you come back to Namibia? And can you please warm the audience up as to why Namibia remains to be arguably the best jurisdiction in Africa?
Absolutely. And you know what I tend to say is Namibia, for a North American observer who hasn't been there, should think of it as Western Australia or as Texas. It really is kind of the Switzerland of Africa in terms of the quality of the jurisdiction, the reliability of the government, the fiscal regime, etc. It's a very organized country. It's very sparsely populated. It has an excellent, obviously it's a democracy. It's got it's got a diversified economy to some extent. It has got enforcement of contracts. It regularly gets rated by the Fraser Institute and others in the top bracket in Africa, together with Botswana, I would say. So for me, having grown up here, it's, of course, I'm comfortable in this country. But even for an outsider, for an independent person, Namibia is great because it's got very good infrastructure. It has an excellent cadastral system for exploration companies. So, for example, the whole system for issuing and maintaining licenses is very transparent and very easy to work with. It's got very low holding costs. So, for example, in Osino's case, we have a very substantial, very large portfolio. I think I've got to work it out exactly, but we're on to close to 8,000 square kilometers of licenses, and the holding costs are very, very low, in contrast to, say, Ecuador, which I operated in recently. So, yeah, so therefore, it's a country that's easy to get to. It's easy to get around in. It's safe. It's reliable. The rules don't change. The rule book is well understood. So, plus geologically, it has a very significant endowment. It's very prospective. It's produced some of the best uranium mines in the world. It's produced copper mines. It's got two excellent gold projects. One may even be able to call them world class, even though they're not that large. The one is 6 million ounces. The other one is about 3 million ounces, but they have been very profitable. So I would say that's a summary.
Would you say that the German roots of Namibia are kind of the core for why the country has been so successful? And with that question also, do you see the mining industry there, Heye, as kind of the core economic engine?
Yeah, of course, being a German in Namibia, it's always slightly political, so I've got to be a little bit careful what I say. But you are right. The German colonial influence has been very important and continues to be important. I mean, one of the things, for example, that Namibia has, which a lot of other countries in Africa don't have, is it's got a system of title. So basically, the entire country is being parceled up and is in private. You're dealing with private landholders. So most other African countries, the land is owned by communities or by the state, whereas in Namibia, most of the land is owned by private individuals. So when negotiating access or so, that just makes it a lot easier for companies like ours. So Namibia's got an excellent service industry. So I mean, just imagine if you're a tourist or an investor from the US, let's say you fly into Windhoek, you go to the local Avis shop, you drive on a perfect bitumen tarred road into the capital city where you find wonderful German bakeries and butcheries and restaurants and tree-lined streets. So it's like that.
No, you covered it quite well. I think that it puts a perspective of, what this country is like. And it's very, very, very much more advanced and modern than people from, say, Canada or United States would suspect. And I think it's important to get that perspective out to folks that this jurisdiction probably at this point really is number one in Africa. So it's just, I think you hit it really well. And obviously the economics with the mining industry there is quite important to the country, judging by, its uranium exports, the amount of, uranium production there, the copper and gold projects that are in progress there. So I think you did a nice job of kind of painting a picture for us. So So tell us about the Osino team, the compensation of management, the share structure, cash on hand, and how much capital do you think will be consumed in 2019 on new exploration programs?
Okay, so firstly, yeah, you asked me about team, capital, share structure, and exploration. So firstly, in terms of team, I'm the founder and CEO. It's our this company and its projects. I'm based in Cape Town, between Cape Town and here. I'm the doer, the getting things done guy. My co-founding partner is a chap by the name of Alan Friedman. He's a Canadian of South African descent that's done a lot of business in Namibia and oil and gas and also in mining. He did Auryx Gold with me and sold the company together with me to B2 Gold. So he's based in Toronto, which is very important for me because he's my link to the capital markets. So he's an integral part of our team. And then, of course, for an exploration company, it's the geologists that count. So we have two very experienced geologists. One of them is ex-BHP. He's the country manager. And then we have Dave Underwood. He is an ex-Anglo guy. He used to be a deal scout also for Newmont in West Africa. So he has a lot of gold experience specifically. So those two guys, John, the country manager, is based in Windhoek. Dave flies in and out. But they built a team of about 35 people in Namibia. So we've got about 7 or 8 geologists, and the rest are field-based people that help us with, that do the drilling, carry out, well, we use contractors for drilling, but we do not only drilling, we also do a lot of regional exploration on a very large scale, like soil sampling, calcrete sampling, etc. So that's what the guys do in the field. In terms of cash and capital structure, so we have around about 60 million shares issued. We trade currently at around 30 cents, so it's a market cap of about 15 million Canadian dollars, just over. And we have, at the end of last year, we had around about $4 million cash in the bank. So give us an EV of about 11 million Canadian. We're going to spend probably around 60% of that this year. But we have been very active last year, both in terms of regional exploration, but also drilling. We're waiting for some results. And the plan is to kind of take a breather now, integrate the data, analyze the data, interpret the data. As you know, exploration is very much an iterative process. You do work, you take a break, you evaluate what you've done, and then you go back in. And we follow that same process. I'm proud to say we are a real explorer. We're not just dusting off some old projects and then promoting them, but we're doing very solid, systematic exploration, and we are very active. And so the plan for 2019 is to finance. We will, even though we don't need to do a financing right now, we want to do one because before kicking off a major drilling program, we want to be sure that we are, in a financially good position. So we just in discussion with some brokers, etc., about how best to do this. We are fortunate that we have a very strong group of shareholders. There's Ross Beatty, who he owns just under 20%. Most of his team are shareholders, the geologists and his finance guys, etc. His whole kind of family are shareholders. Then there's Resource Capital Funds out of Denver who own just under 10%. So, very supportive and a good name to have on the register. And then 2 other notable names. One is Patrick Copper, who, quite a lot of your listeners may know. He's a very successful Toronto public markets entrepreneur. He made a lot of money with us on our previous deal, Auryx Gold, and he just kind of supports Alan and I in the deals that we do usually. And then there are some other shareholders that came with Ross Beatty. Some of his supporters in some of his other deals came in with us as well. But we are always conscious of having a nicely diversified shareholder base, and that's why we are always on the lookout for new investors, and hopefully with an improving gold market that we discussed earlier, maybe we will see some of the gold funds might be getting some inflows again, which maybe they'll start deploying also back into the juniors again. So that's kind of the plan.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. Give us your approach to compensation of management. I mean, you guys are an explorer. Is your view, is it your belief that the compensation kind of gets ramped up as the company progresses over time and develops an asset versus are you of the opinion that using money for exploration work is much more important than, say, some of these executives that are overpaid in the industry that tend to mind the shareholders over actually doing the work on the ground?
Absolutely. Don't get me started on this topic. I think executive pay and pay in the mining industry and in the exploration industry, I think it is just ridiculous what has happened in the last 5 or 10 years. I think generally speaking, I'm sorry, I'm sticking my neck out here. I think a lot of your viewers may sort of take issue with what I'm about to say, but I genuinely believe that pay in our industry is too high. It's people are getting paid way too much, especially in exploration companies. So we've taken that on board, and in Osino we're actually very conservative. We would like to, well, not would like to think, we are definitely conservative, and we want to be dependable, and we want to not be egregious in what we do, and that goes for our compensation policy as well. So we definitely pay below market. The top team, which includes myself, is significantly underpaid by Canadian or even Southern African standards. But we have shares, and in my case, and in Alan Friedman's shares, we actually subscribe for shares in every financing that we have done so far. So we've, between myself and my family, I have around about just over $1 million worth of subscriptions that have gone into the company. So we've put real money on the line. Some of our top geos, actually my 2 senior geos, have done the same in the form of paying or working for sweat equity initially and taking shares as payment. And in fact, right now, I mean, the gold market is getting better, but it's not good yet. And so we're just going through a sort of cost-cutting exercise where we just looking at all our non-essential costs, including salaries. I'm not saying salaries are non-essential, but I'm saying that we're making up to our team. We don't want to do people in. So geologists need to be paid fairly, but for a company that doesn't produce cash, that does exploration, we need the cash to go into the ground. So our geos are very motivated. They're very committed to this company, and they've actually agreed to take some of their pay in shares. We've got a standard share option package, which we've issued. I think it's about 80% or so issued. At very reasonable share prices. In fact, the share options are out of the money at the moment. So, I mean, your listeners can do their own research, but I can assure you that in Osino, everything stacks up, and we are very conservative in this approach.
Well, I agree in full with your comments. I think that the industry is overpaid a lot, and there are, folks tend, there's a lot out there that tend to, instead of mining, producing and building a mine project, they decide to just mine shareholders instead. And so I really appreciate your comments and your position on it, because I agree 100%. Take us back to Auryx Gold. Who was instrumental in the team getting that deal done with B2 Gold, and what similarities existed with Auryx early on that now potentially exist with Osino?
Yeah, thanks. That's a great lead for me. So let me deal with the Auryx Gold team first, and then how does some of that apply to Osino? So basically, Auryx Gold was formed by 4 people. It was a chap by the name of Bongani TC. He's a South African mining entrepreneur. Tim Searcy, Canadian. He was the CEO. Bongani was the chairman. Alan Friedman, my partner, and I was the president. So basically, Tim Searcy and I were co-managing that company. Again, I was based out of Cape Town, same as I'm doing now with Osino. I was the sort of the doer, the crossing the T, dotting the I guy, getting stuff done in Namibia, and Tim was based in Toronto, mainly doing the capital market side of things. So that worked very well for us. We, as those 4 founders of the Auryx team, we were very fortunate that we got on well and that we had complementary strengths. So we had a very constructive team effort in building that company. We also had a great board. We have Dave Hodgson there. He's the ex-COO of AngloGold Ashanti. He's a real senior statesman of gold mining. There was George Peary. He's a well-known and ex-Placidome. And then there was Tony Harwood, who's a very, very well-known exploration geologists. So those three guys were the non-execs, and they gave us as the executives a lot of support. I think we were very fortunate. I mean, it wasn't pure chance. We crafted it intentionally. This very kind of constructive board. So that was essential. When we met with B2 Gold, I mean, to be honest, we were approached. It wasn't quite our credit. I think we were approached, and we were approached on the strengths or the merits of the project. And I mean, that's what we built. So I'm good with that. And again, we were somewhat lucky. There's a lot of luck involved because, Clive Johnson turns out to be a great guy. I mean, firstly, he shared a lot of our values. He shares our values in terms of entrepreneurship, but also in terms of giving back to the country. So sorry, I'm digressing a little bit, but me being a Namibian citizen, it's very important for me that this Otjikoto project, which in those days was a blank canvas, and B2 Gold had the opportunity to build a great mine or to flunk it. And they built a great mine. And a lot of that was due to Clive Johnson's personal approach. And so, from that perspective, when B2 approached us, of course, we would have liked to have seen some friction in that deal and maybe get a competing bid and get the share price up, etc. But that didn't happen. And in the end, it's okay because it was a fair deal that happened. It wasn't egregious in any way. We paid $180 million for a company that is now worth $1 billion. In my view, it produces $150 million free cash a year. So it's turned into a fantastic asset for B2 Gold. But that's okay, because it was good for us, for our track record. It was good for Namibia. It was good for our shareholders. So I really consider that Auryx Gold deal that happened at that time, that was the model of how the mining venture capital, how it should work. So the second part of your question, you asked me to relate that back to Osino and how much of that can we transport into Osino to make sure that Osino turns into a similar success. Well, firstly, building that team and building that constructive board of directors, we've done the same thing. So we've so far brought Dave Hodgson along. He has a lot of credibility for investors, and Alan and I, we're relatively young guys. I mean, still like to think of myself a young guy. I'm 46, but we need grey hairs, and we need people that kind of keep us in check too. So that's Dave's role. I think we can definitely strengthen our board further, and as the company progresses, we've only been public for just over 6 months. So as we progress, we'll add some additional skills to the board. But very importantly, and this is another key learning out of the Auryx Gold experience that we're applying in Osino, is that in exploration, you have to be well capitalized. Because yes, there's a lot of luck involved in finding a great deposit, but more than luck, there is boreholes. The more you drill, the more you find. And in order to do that, you need capital. So in Auryx Gold, when we bought that Otjikoto project, it was seen to be marginal, nothing special, would never become a mine. And through focused use of Canadian capital and a lot of drilling, we turned what was marginal into what B2 saw as a great project, and which they proved to be a great project. So now we're applying that same thinking to Osino, which even though we're much smaller and much more early stage, unfortunately, it would be great to have a discovery already, or have a resource already, which we don't. But we have great shareholders, and we are very active, and we're hitting it, and that is important in exploration. That improves your chances of success tremendously. So that crafting of a strong shareholder base is absolutely critical, and I think we've gone a long way to achieve that in Osino. We're not resting on our laurels. We're certainly not relying on the Ross Beatty factor to see us through this. Ross wrote checks, and he's given us a lot of credibility, and we're very thankful for that. But we cannot just rely on him. So we are forever constantly looking to strengthen our shareholder base further.
Right, and I think there's a bunch of key points. Obviously a strong shareholder base, strong hands is really important at these early stage levels, and also the community outreach you mentioned, I think that's critical in a country like Namibia to make sure that you have the government backing you and they're on your side, and community outreach is one of the keys to getting that done. So from a geological perspective, the Karibib Gold Project, kind of the primary target of Osino. Geologically, do you kind of see that? Does everything kind of look really similar to what you're almost in the exact same region as the Auryx? Does everything kind of look more or less the same, and is the target kind of the same?
Yeah, in some respects, well, we think so, yes, but not everybody thought so previously. So why I say this is because, we bring some fresh thinking, some holistic thinking to exploration in Namibia, and I'll explain that in a moment. So basically speaking, this belt that Otjikoto and Namibia, which is an ex-Anglo mine that's close to us, and our Karibib project is all in what is called the Damara Belt, or some geologists call it the Pan-African Belt. And it's basically a belt that sits between the two cratons, the Congo craton and the Karoo craton. And just for those listeners of yours that don't know what this means, is basically it's a tectonic environment. So you have these plates, earth mantle plates. You've got these plates that were rifting apart, and you had sediments filling in. Then you had recompression, and with that, under pressure and temperature, you had these mineralizing fluids that were formed that are gold bearing, and they would crystallize out or settle out in these large structures. So that's a classic orogenic setting. Now, Namibia, or the geologists operating in Namibia in the last 10 or 20 years, didn't traditionally quite see it like that. So for example, Otjikoto, in the early days, people said it looks like an IOCG, or it could be this, or it could be that. But increasingly, there's agreement that these gold deposits are certainly structurally controlled. So what that means, just very high level, in an orogenic setting, you've got 3 or 4 factors that count. Firstly, you need source rock, which in our case is sedimentary. We're in a large sedimentary basin, so we tick that box. Secondly, you need pathways for these mineralizing fluids that are described to flow, and those pathways typically are large structures or faults, which are in place. And then you need traps. These mineralizing fluids need to be concentrated in a certain area. That trap could be a folding, bending, structural discontinuity typically. And this is sort of exploration 101. We didn't invent this, we're just applying it. And all of these factors apply where we are. So in fact, I'm very proud that we are bringing Richard Goldfarb to Namibia. He's the world's foremost expert on orogenic gold deposits. He's worked a lot in China and other places. He's never been to Namibia before. And he's coming to Namibia in a couple of weeks' time, in 2 weeks' time actually, and jointly with B2 and the other operating gold mine in Namibia, basically the 3 operators on this belt, which is us, B2, and the Namibia Gold Mine. We're bringing Richard Goldfarb out here to have a look at what's there to further back up our thesis. So that just gives you a flavor of high level kind of the terrain that we are in. And yes, specifically, you asked me whether there are similarities. Yes, there definitely are a lot of similarities. Our thesis is that Otjikoto and the gold system at Karibib, where we are active, and also at Namibia, is very likely to have been formed at exactly the same time. We've got to prove this still. This has not been proven. But if that's the case, it kind of gives substance to our claim and our thinking that another key factor in orogenic gold belts elsewhere in the world is that these type of deposits generally don't occur in isolation. They occur in clusters. If you look at, for example, West Africa, the Senegal Mali Shear Zone, it's a classic similar setting. And from one operation at Anglo, where I was 20 years ago, fast forward 20 years now, there are 10, 15 operating gold mines, so a lot has been discovered. But they've had 20 years of ongoing intensive exploration. Now back to Namibia, we have two gold projects. We have a definite orogenic belt. A large part of Namibia is covered, which makes exploration complicated. And I would say that is one of the key reasons why you haven't seen more discoveries in this region. And that's really what Osino is setting out to change. So initially we wanted to consolidate a very significant ground position in these prospective regions, and we've largely achieved that. And secondly, now explore it and actually prove our thesis.
So this time around with Osino, tell us kind of what you'd prefer to do. Would you rather, prove up assets for another buyout, or is there a real desire internally at Osino to take the potential asset, prove it up, and take it all the way to potentially a mining operation in the future?
There is dreaming and there's reality. So when I dream, I would go for your second option. But the reality is that I don't think it is the right way to go. So let me be clear. So Osino, I'm not ashamed to say, we are setting Osino up to do good work, to prove up our thesis, but then we want to sell it. And I think that's the model, and it's a successful model because exploration companies or junior companies are typically good at raising money. They are typically quite entrepreneurial and they're efficient, often in carrying out exploration. But because they are small, they don't have the necessary skills to actually build mines. And that's why I'm a firm believer in partnering with the big guys at the right time. And I think again at Auryx Gold, that was a perfect example. We took that Otjikoto project from about 1 million, 1.5 million ounces resource to about 2 million ounces resource and an advanced PEA. We started with early infrastructure construction, but at that point we sold the project to B2Gold, and they spent another $300 million building a gold mine, and there's no doubt that we would have never been able to do what they've done. And so with Osino, we plan to do the same thing. We are much more early stage, so we've got to put a lot more meat on the bone, so to speak, before potential tie-up with a major could happen. But certainly we've got the scale, and we've got the land position scale, and we are creating the geological scale to attract a major partner. And I mean, that doesn't have to be an outright sale straight away. That could also be a corporate, a technical group like B2, or there are many others that might share our geological vision and invest in us and help us do this exploration. But so to put it bluntly and to be direct, definitely we would look to sell before construction of the mine. I think that would make most sense.
Yeah, and I think you've got the timing. The timing this time might be a pretty good setup because you've got arguably a good sentiment going forward and a good potential bull cycle just before us here. So it should be an interesting story to watch and watch it develop. So give us kind of the longer term strategy at Osino. Can you kind of give us kind of over the next couple of years the major milestone activities you're really looking for from proving up an asset, moving to potentially a PEA and so forth? Can you kind of give us just a brief outline of timeline?
Yeah, I can, but 4 years is an eternity. So a lot can happen in 4 years, but certainly we have a plan. And our plan is to add value to our portfolio, to turn it around, because remember, we have a very large portfolio, far too large, arguably, for a junior. But we certainly are aiming to make a discovery, an economic discovery, and ideally drill it out and deliver a project, so to speak. That's the plan. Now, that doesn't happen overnight, and that doesn't happen, it doesn't happen in an instant. It's a exploration, a systematic, long-term process. So we are quite far advanced towards that. We haven't made an economic discovery yet, but our most important flagship project is the Auryx Gold trend, which we put out a press release a couple of days ago. It's grown into a very significant, very large gold system. But bear in mind that it has been tested or sampled, but it has not been drilled, and that's the next step. So Osino, let's say year one was 2 years ago, was all about consolidation, positioning shareholders, building the company. Stage two was getting exploration going and proving or finding a large gold system. We did that with the Auryx trend, which we've proven now to be mineralized and to be large scale in exploration terms, certainly very large scale. But the next step is to actually convert that into an economic discovery. So when I spoke earlier about these orogenic systems, and I said we need to find a trap. So we need to find one place or multiple places within that trend where the gold has concentrated sufficiently to be economic. And when I say economic, I mean, to me, the yardstick is, we need to get something that has line of sight to 1 million ounces plus. And I say that because to me, a respectable, I don't have to find Sunrise Dam or, pick one of the, whatever. I don't have to find the biggest gold deposit in the world. We are looking to find another Ochikoto or another Navachap, which are our local Namibian proxies. Both of those are multi-million ounces, and both of those produce, or were planned initially to produce, in the region of 100,000 ounces a year. Ochikoto, in fact, is doing almost double of that. That's luck, and it worked out well. But so that's where the 1 million ounce number comes from, because to deliver an open pit, to deliver a credible open pit life of mine, you need 10 years at 100,000 ounces. That's 1 million ounces. So that's what we're looking for. You asked me about the timeline. So basically the timeline is this year, we need to raise more money to be in a financially strong position. And then we're going to kick off a very significant drill program. I mean, we are going to carry on with our programs regardless, to identify further targets and to advance the targets that we have. But the juice, really, the flagship project, is the Karabuk Trend, and that requires significant drilling now, which we look to do around about, from the end of the second half of this year, depends on financing. And then, that's, again, if I take the Ochikoto Auryx Gold experience, it takes time to drill out a resource. So that could take another year, 2 years, if everything goes according to plan. Again, it's very hard to project because it's dependent on success.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I certainly agree that there'll be some years coming here, and but it certainly be good to see how you guys establish that asset and build it up to your threshold requirements to call it economic. So, Heye, are there some key people that you like and respect in the business? Are there any companies or talented people that our audience should keep an eye on?
Well, definitely Clive Johnson from B2 Gold and Ross Beatty, they come to mind straight away, and I think for different reasons. I think Clive Johnson, because he's a doer and he's proven his mettle, but he's also a great guy. I mentioned that earlier. He's got his heart in his right place, and he's delivered exceptional performance in how he has built B2 Gold from nothing to what it is now. His share price, unfortunately, doesn't reflect that yet, but I don't think that's a reflection on him or on his company, but it's a reflection of sentiment in the industry. So therefore, Clive is definitely one to watch. And then, of course, there's Ross Beatty. I mean, his track record in history speaks for itself. But what I like, or what stands out about Ross, is just his personality. He's just he's a real gentleman. He's driven. But he does business he does business with integrity. So those two guys definitely come to mind. I mean, there are a lot of other successful operators out there, but Clive and Ross, to me, are real leading lights.
Agreed. Absolutely. So I'm sure we have a number of potential investors in our audience that are probably hearing of Osino for the first time. What would you say to them, and why should they consider a position in Osino at this moment?
So to me, 3 factors. Firstly, we know what we're doing. We're an experienced team, and we've delivered value before. Secondly, we're in a good country where the assets won't be stolen, and we won't be victim of a civil war or the usual sort of upheavals that you often experience in places in South America or Africa or even Asia. So we're in a quality jurisdiction with some very good assets. And then thirdly, we have excellent shareholders. So for a sort of retail or smaller investor, it's important to have that, because that's life insurance. Because I would say that the biggest risk in investing in a junior company like ours is for that company to run out of money. And with the shareholder base, 40% of the shares in Osino being held by the group I mentioned earlier, plus 10% by the executive team, Alan Friedman and I, and we've got, like I said, over $1 million of our own money in here. We are really truly aligned with shareholders, and I think those are those are the key factors that I think a potential investor should consider.
So how can potential interested investors learn more about you and Osino?
So I'm very open. Well, certainly I'm happy to, I'll mention my email address just now. Anyone can send me an email. I will respond to anyone that's interested. We have a website, it's a little bit dated. We're busy updating it. There's some information there. But if somebody is, or if anyone is interested in investing in Osino, contact me directly. We also have an investor relations manager, Julia Becker. She's based in Vancouver, so she's on the same time zone as North America. So just contact us directly and reach out. I think timing-wise, it's good because, as I said, we are contemplating a financing, and we're looking at signing up one of the well-known brokers to help us with it. And so therefore, for retail investors, when the financing happens, it's always a good time to invest, because otherwise it's difficult for them to be accommodated. But at the same time, of course, we would like people to buy shares in the market, because Osino at this point is still very much unknown. We trade somewhat, but we don't trade that much yet. And, a bit of retail buying in the market will help us tremendously.
Yes, absolutely. And I would just say that the website, OsinoResources.com, that's OSINO Resources.com. And of course, on there, the majority of the contact information is listed on the website. And Heye, if you want to share your email, you can.
Yeah, no problem. So basically on the website, I think there's info at, and that goes straight to Julia, and she forwards me every email. So it definitely goes straight to me. My own email address is my initial and my surname at OsinoResources.com. So I'll just spell it. It's HDAUN like Nelly at OsinoResources.com. But you can also find it on the website, and I respond to all emails I receive.
Okay. Well, Heye, it's been a pleasure, and I appreciate you taking the time with us today. We look forward to having you back.
Great, Andrew. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be on your show, and thanks for your support.